Hello, fight fans, and welcome to the Combat Challenge podcast. My guest today is a former professional MMA athlete, a student of the sport, a coach of the sport under Coliseum MMA, an event organizer, a well-respected and recognized MMA MC. He's been a judge, he's been a ref, before he decided to put the mic down and pick up the gi, and he took up jiu-jitsu. He is now a brown belt under Coach Adam Adhead from Factory BJJ, competed on numerous jiu-jitsu events, both nationally and internationally, winning the European International Masters, the British Open, and the World Masters. Mr. Aaron Chatfield, nice to see you, my brother.
Hey, Carney, how are you? It's been a long, long time, my friend.
It has, man, it has. It's been a while because since you kind of stopped doing the MCing, because that's where I knew you from, because you used to come and do the shows in Bradford, and then you put that gi on, brother, and you disappeared from the MMA world, my friend.
Yeah, you know, I was doing a lot of the MCing, and that was the problem. I was doing so much of it that it was starting to really impact in training. So I was, you know, I'd be working all week, and then I'd get to the weekend, and I'd have a show on Saturday night. I might have a show on Sunday night as well. And my weekend was gone. And I just got to the point where I went, I want to get back to training more. So I kind of just went, right, I'm going to stop MCing and focus on my own training. And the only person who's got me back to MCing so far is Chris Thompson for Grapplefest.
Yeah, but Chris is all right. You've known him for years, haven't you, brother? So
yeah, absolutely. He's a good friend. You know, and Grapplefest isn't an MMA show; it's a grappling show. So when he reached out and said we're putting on a show, I just went, yeah, okay, I'm happy to do that. Yeah, I wouldn't do it for many people, but yeah, I'll come and do that. And do you know what? I really love it. It's a lot of fun. I've seen some world class grapplers on that show, and then hopefully we'll see some more. We'll be back in 2021, I guess. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
So, brother, we'll just focus a bit on the MC side. Would you have any idea how many shows you actually MC'd at? Did you ever record that?
No, not really. The first one I did was my own show when I did a small, almost like a boxing dinner show, but for MMA. And I had some interesting people on that show. So Terry Ettim, his first fight was on that show. And it was in a hotel in Stockport that was owned by Jack Trickett, boxing promoter and manager. And hey, I didn't want to pay for an MC. So, you know, I kind of went, well, I'll do it myself then. So, yeah, so that was my first one. And then I've done a lot of shows since then. So regularly doing your show, doing kind of the Chris Zorba's show. I was a judge on that. And, you know, I was all over the place doing stuff. So I was going out of my way to try and get as much experience doing as many different jobs in MMA as I could do. So.
Well, you did, brother, because like you said, you did the reffing, the judging, the MCing. I'm sure you would have done some commentary as well.
Yeah, done lots of commentary. Used to have some really good commentary that I did with our friend Ian Butlin. So Ian and I used to share the mic on quite a few shows. You remember Darren Sherlock's show? That was a good one with Ian and myself. Did both the commentary on that. I've also MC'd that show as well.
Is that Fight Icon?
Yeah, Fight Icon. So yeah, I just did everything, and then I did a little bit on M1. I think one of the shows that Ian Freeman couldn't get to, so I did the commentary with Ian in Atlantic City. That was a great weekend. So I flew out to Atlantic City in the US and did an M1 commentary. So yeah, it was good. I've done lots of things.
Brother, I've just remembered, right? Didn't your fight name used to be Red Mist?
Yes. Yeah.
What's the story behind that, brother?
I've got a bad temper. That's pretty much it. Yeah, I kind of, you know, I don't have a bad temper now. I'm old, so I can't afford to have a bad temper because people can whoop my ass. But when I was younger, I had a bad temper. And Danny Wallace, who was one of the original coaches of Coliseum, so Coliseum was set up by Danny Wallace and Danny Rushton. Danny Wallace used to have a bit of a laugh on the way that I would red mist out, and I could be sparring, and something would happen, and I'm gone. I can just see red mist. And there was times when we were sparring where the rounds that were supposed to be kind of 5-minute rounds would finish in 2 minutes because he'd just go time, and that'd be because I'd gone. So but it's good fun. But and then he used to, when he cornered me in a couple of fights that I had, he used to treat it very much as trying to keep a kettle simmering but not boiling. How did you balance out making sure that I didn't get too annoyed and too crazy and too red mist, but I was at least hyped up to a certain level? So Danny Wallace was a master at making sure that I was warmed up properly. Absolutely.
You've been involved in martial arts, if I was to guess, at least 3 decades. Can you share with us your journey in martial arts from a young age? What sort of sports you got into that led you to where you are now?
So I think it's the same story that you've probably got off lots of other people. So I was born in 1970, so I was in the 80s. I was a teenager. It's a decade where there was lots of martial arts films. And obviously you watch martial arts and went, that's what I want to do. I want to do jumping, spinning kicks. So I did a little bit of karate, a little bit of judo. To be quite frank, hey, I was a fat, out of shape lad, and I didn't stick with any of it whatsoever. Really didn't stick with any of it. So I did nothing apart from, a few weeks of karate, a few weeks of judo, gave it up until about 91, 92. I actually lost my job and suddenly found myself with lots of spare time. And a friend of mine, Gethin Jones, who I used to work with and have known for many years, he donated a multi-gym to me. And I kind of went, well, I've got no excuse here. I've got lots of spare time. I've got a multi-gym. I'm going to lose some weight and kind of get myself in shape. So I did that. And then I thought, hey, actually, I've always wanted to get into a combat sport. Now's the time to do it. I haven't got an excuse to saying I'm a fat lad anymore. I need to go and do it. So I guess 91, 92, I started with Thai boxing and a little bit of boxing as well. And I haven't stopped training since that point. So, it's coming up to 30 years worth of back-to-back martial arts, which is a long time when you look back on it. And I think now it's just, I can't imagine not doing martial arts. I really can't. I can't picture it. I did a little bit of hunting around to try and find a Thai boxing gym. There was a local boxing gym, so I did a little bit of boxing at Broomwood Amateur Boxing Club. But I wanted to do more, so I found a Thai boxing gym in Stockport, Naraswan Thai boxing under a coach called Steve McCardle. And I started there and pretty immediately kind of dropped into training as much as I possibly could. So I think I was doing probably 4 days a week, something like that, 3-4 days a week in Thai boxing. Really enjoyed it and really kind of just got into it and got into training and got into martial arts. So I kept that going probably for about 7, 8, 9 years, something like that. So until the very late 90s. Had a couple of fights, very mediocre, not a great fighter at all in Thai boxing. It was a Thai boxing club that had grades, so I went through all the kind of grades, etc. Got to my red grade, which I guess is the equivalent of a black belt. It's the kind of final grade. Got that grade and then started thinking, right, now what do I do? And again, I'd done a little bit of judging and a little bit of reffing and other bits and pieces. I'd done some coaching, but I'd kind of got to the point of going, right, I need something else to get me driving now. I need something else to give me a goal. And I remember thinking to myself, I wonder whether that Ultimate Fighting Championship is still going. So I remember seeing the UFC in kind of 94, 95. If you remember the time, I think HMV had the first 3 events on VHS tape. They were all released at the same time. And I'd watched it at a friend's house. And the arrogant Thai boxer that I was, I'd watched this and said, clearly Thai boxing's winning everything in this. Watched it unfold and went, well, that can't be right. So still carried on with Thai boxing. But around 99, I made a decision and said, right, okay, I wonder whether that UFC thing is still going. And internet was just about starting. I remember doing a search on the internet and found a club in Marple near Stockport, run by a guy.
Can I just ask, when you were doing that search, did you have a dial-up connection?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Took a long time. Dial-up connection, 56k modem. Yeah, definitely. So I found this club called Defence Unlimited, run by a guy called Phil Wright. Now, Defence Unlimited was actually a couple of clubs that was owned by Carl Tanswell. So before Carl Tanswell moved into SBG, he had Defence Unlimited. That was kind of his brand. And Phil Wright ran a club in Marple under that Defence Unlimited brand. So I literally quit Thai boxing on a Monday, and on a Tuesday I started MMA. It was, literally overnight. I just went, right, switch. Never went back to Thai boxing. Upset my old coach, all that kind of thing. But as far as I was concerned, I was doing it for me. I wasn't doing it to upset anybody. I was doing it because, right, bored with that now. I want to do something else. So I trained at Defence Unlimited probably for about 6-7 months, and then all of a sudden it closed. And I met, Matt Thorpe. I met Matt Thorpe at that club and a few other people as well that I still see today. And when it closed, the coach, Phil Wright, came to me and said, look, hey, I'll give you an idea where you might be able to train. He said, there's a club that we've had over here called Coliseum. They're based in Leigh. And I think you'll like it there. It's quite a tough club. And I went, yeah, sounds great. I'll go there. And I reached out on the internet to a guy called Stephen Millward, who you will recognise as everybody knows him as Widge Millward. And there's a story there. You should ask him why he's called Widge. But anyway, I reached out to him, didn't really know who he was, and said, look, I want to come down to Coliseum. Got down to the Coliseum one night. It was at the back of a spit and sawdust weights gym. And in the back was literally this crappy room with mats on the floor. Nothing else. There was no cage. There was no bags. It was literally just a room with mats on the floor. And it was full of tough people. And I remember going in there, cocky as hell, still thinking, yeah, Thai boxer, bum, bum, bum. And I got my ass handed to me in seconds. And the first person who did it was that Widge Millward. And I think he must have been, 19. And he's not a man mountain, put it that way. And he literally just took me down to the ground and submitted me in seconds. And I think on that night I went, wow, I know nothing. All of this Thai boxing, useless. It's meant nothing to me. And I was kind of hooked on MMA at that point. So I stayed with Coliseum for many, many years. So fought for them and then kind of moved more into the coaching bit, especially with the striking. So I did a lot of the striking coaching because I had the Thai boxing background, but also some of the grappling coaching as well. And stayed with them even when they moved. So we moved from one place, we moved to Powerbeck Gym. And then from Powerbeck, we moved to where Saul Rogers Academy is now. So when they set that up, we moved Coliseum over there, and I carried on coaching and training there until I guess about 2015, something like that. So probably 15 years of MMA. Then 2015, I'd kind of just made a decision that I wanted to start training for myself again. So I spent a lot of that 15 years kind of coaching and focusing on other people. So I didn't, sounds like a long time for me to be training, but I don't think I learned a lot during that time because I spent most of my time focusing on everybody else. I focused on managing the fighters. I focused on emceeing. I focused on coaching fighters. I focused on cornering fighters, so excuse me one second. I joined Matt Thorpe in pretty much every one of his fights. We travelled all over the world with Matt Thorpe.
Didn't he end up on M1 Global?
So yeah, I'll pick that up in a second, actually. So 2015, I kind of made the decision I wanted to train for myself. I reached out to try and get a gi coach to come down to the Coliseum. A guy called Alan Howcroft took that position. And I did a little bit of gi training with him. And I actually got my blue belt whilst at Coliseum from Chico Mendes. And then when I got the blue belt, I went, I'm just not interested in MMA anymore. I need to just do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I can't do that in Coliseum. So I made the decision, right, guys, I'm out. I'm going to find myself a Jiu-Jitsu club. Did a bit of hunting around, looked at a few clubs, tried a few places, and made a decision to move to Factory. And I'm still at Factory now. So Adam's been a great coach for me. I've learned a lot. He promoted me to purple belt back in 2017, and then I got my brown belt last year. So and that's where I am today. So, you know, but you mentioned M1, so I can tell you that story if you want. That's a good story, I think. So M1 for 1 year, I think it was 2009, did a kind of team challenge event where they ran a season of having teams. So we had Team England, M1 Team England. So we had Ian Butler in with Simon Phillips. We had Tom Blackledge was part of it. Robbie Broughton was part of it. Matt Thorpe was on it. So we had a really good team. And the idea was that you would travel to other countries, they would have an event, and you would fight another team. So it would be 5 against 5, not at the same time, but 5 against 5. So the first event we did was to fly out to Japan. So straight away, it was on a plane off to Japan, and flew out into Japan, fought Team Japan, and we beat them 4-1. Which we were not supposed to do. You know, we were the new guys. We were supposed to lose to Team Japan in Japan. So clearly we didn't. And then it was actually during my birthday. And then we went out, celebrated my birthday, which was Team England. And then Tom Blackledge had guest cornerman join him, which was Rampage Jackson. So we went out with Rampage Jackson into Roppongi, which is like the kind of Gaijin foreigners nightclub district in Tokyo, and we went out with him. One of the best moments I remember of that is we went to a club, a hip hop club, and we walked in. Obviously, people recognised Rampage Jackson straight away. He was huge in Japan, but little do you know, he's also a really good MC rapper. So he walked into this club, and he gets up and speaks to the DJ. DJ gives him a mic, lays down a beat, and Rampage Jackson starts rapping about us. So we're all on the dance floor, and he's literally rapping about us all, and it's just kind of mind-blowing. That was my birthday in 2009, so that was really good, you know. But M1, we then did Kansas, and then the finals, the semi-finals were in Amsterdam, which is the one where Tom Blackledge got the crazily quick knockout against the Spanish guy. I think it was something like 8 or 9 seconds. And there's a good story there as well. If you've not, I don't know whether you've already had Tom Blackledge on, haven't you? So I don't know whether he told you the story of why he knocked that guy out so quick.
He must have been a bit humble because he didn't tell me, brother, but you're going to tell me. Okay.
So what happened was the semi-finals was done over 2 days. And we were fighting on day 1 against Team Spain. Team Spain, for whatever reason, were in a situation where they had to fight Saturday and Sunday against different teams. So just the way it had worked out. And I think they were struggling in the light heavyweight division, which was the division that Tom Blackledge was in. And we were stood near them when they were talking. And the Spanish light heavyweight, they were supposedly going to have 2 separate teams, one for the Saturday, one for the Sunday, struggling in that light heavyweight division. But the Spanish guy was stood next to us oddly, and he was talking to his coaches saying, "Don't worry, I can fight both days. I'll take care of the English guy really quickly, and then I'll be fine for tomorrow." So I think that riled Tom Blackledge up quite a bit. So Tom Blackledge literally came out, and as I say, within 8 seconds, boom, head kick. The guy is out. I don't think he fought on the Sunday either. So, you know, but it was really entertaining. And Team England went on to the finals, but I think we lost against Russia. I wasn't actually at that event, but we lost against Russia. Some really big names, guys who have ended up on major promotions like the UFC and Bellator as well. So it was really good. So yeah, that was quite an experience being a coach for Team England. Really was.
For sure, brother. Brother Aaron, thanks for sharing that with us, my brother, man. Now listen, all us promoters, right, including me, think, oh yeah, you know, we've been promoting for a while, and you know, we first did our event, you know, so many years ago. But am I right in thinking, brother, you did an event years ago? Is that right? That you did one?
So I did a couple of events. I did some really small events. I think two, almost like dinner shows. I described it for the first one was the one that I emceed on. And it really kind of small dinner shows at this small hotel. The idea being they'll have dinner and they'll watch, you know, 8 or 9 fights. And we did those. And then we counted the money afterwards and went, "Ooh, it's not worth doing." You know, it's literally like, it's not worth doing this. You know, we'd spent weeks promoting, you know, on the phone, trying to sell tables to businesses and all these kind of things. And I think when we counted up the money, we'd made about 300 quid between two of us. And it's just like, forget it. This is not good. And then, you know, me and my business partner at the time, who will remain nameless because he's a dick. But I said I wouldn't upset anybody. But anyway, we basically started going, well, why don't we put something bigger on? If you put something bigger on, you sell more tickets, you make more money. Seems sensible. So we started looking at shows, and then we decided, well, why don't we bring a bigger brand to the UK? We already had Cage Rage and Cage Warriors and those kind of things. Why don't we take a recognised brand and see whether we can bring it to the UK? So we reached out to King of the Cage, Terry Treblecock, and said, hey, can we put on a King of the Cage show in the UK? And he went, yeah, absolutely. Here's my price tag for licensing King of the Cage. So we paid him a lot of money and he gave us a King of Cage brand to own and run in the UK. And we had it basically contracted for 3 events per year. So then we started trying to put a show on. And so we first planned to put the show on in Huddersfield. And Ian Butlin was going to be on the card. He was going to fight Charles Bennett, Crazy Horse Bennett. And yeah, it all kicked off in the news. So this is it. People forget that there was a time when, you know, MMA was hated. You know, the government and the councils didn't want those shows in the cities. They wanted that sport banned. And we ended up getting the real rough end of the stick. So we had a leisure centre booked in Huddersfield, and then all of a sudden they just basically cancelled it and said, no, you will not put a show on in Huddersfield. So that kind of kiboshed it. We had a look around, couldn't do it in Halifax, couldn't find a venue in Manchester, kept looking. And eventually we kind of ended up saying, well, let's look at Sheffield, because we knew that Cage Warriors had done a show in Sheffield. We didn't want to take their venue because that would obviously be unreasonable. So we ended up looking at Sheffield Ice. So now we've gone from an 800-seater leisure centre to a 2,200-seater arena. You know, when you look back and you go, how on earth did we let ourselves get to that point? But it just kind of, just things kept flowing. And we had the date in the diary. And so we booked it. It cost a lot of money. I think it cost us 11 grand for the venue in total. Yeah, I know. So, yeah, so we just went ahead and started putting the show on, and then we tried to do something a little bit different, and regrettably so, we put it on a Friday night, thinking, hey, boxing works on a Friday night, let's go for a Friday night. We gave all the tickets to Ticketmaster, so instead of fighters having to hold on to the tickets and sell all these tickets, we said, hey, you will get paid, and then you don't have to worry about selling tickets. I'm not worried. That's our job. We're promoters. So it all went with Ticketmaster. That went wrong. Yeah, it just turned into a real disaster. So the end of it was when we put the show on the Friday night. I remember standing at the top and looking in the venue, and I know we had 223 tickets was all that we sold. So yeah, the show went on, but we made a massive loss. I think in total the loss was somewhere in the region of about 45,000.
45,000. And how many years ago was that, brother?
2005. June 24th, 2005. So the only reason we managed to offset some of that was because we actually managed to get some footage from the US off Terry, and we got the footage re-edited. And do you remember the TV channel ITV Men and Motors? Well, we got on the phone to them and said, hey, do you want to buy some MMA shows? And we went down to London, had a meeting with these guys. Bear in mind, I've never done anything like this before. Yeah, sat in front of these TV execs, and we sold them this MMA show. We said, look, what we'll do, we'll give you these MMA shows. We'll do 5 weeks of all these existing US ones. And then week 6 will be, boom, the UK one. Sounded great. So that's exactly what we did. And we got paid 20 odd grand for that. So that offsets some of the losses that we made, but we still lost, well over 20 grand. Took me another 10 years to pay that off.
Well, brother, on a small scale, like when I do the shows, that's one of the reasons why I have it here in Bradford at Cedar Court Hotel, because I don't want to take that risk in going big, because it works for me. The amateur shows, and there's people who've only had like maybe 2 or 3 fights. They have a lot more support and they come there. But there's been one show where I lost a bit of money, nothing like what you've lost, brother, but I lost a bit of money. And I remember lying down, because I stay over on the night just to make sure everything's tidied up. I remember lying down and like my eyes welling up and like tears coming down, the side of my cheek. And but not like crying, but it was just like I was so tired. And even though I only lost a little bit of money, you think about all the effort you put in. And it's hard, isn't it, brother? It's hard, man.
It was rough, but, the thing is, it was our choice. We're the promoters. We put the promote on. And the thing is, if you're the promoter, the risk is yours. End of story. That's it. That's, because ultimately, if we'd sold 2,200 tickets, we would have had loads of money. So the risk is entirely yours. The reward is entirely ours as well. So, on reflection, I really wish we'd not let ourselves get out of hand, because we just kept kind of running with it, and it just grew bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. I wish we'd never done that. But hey, if nothing else, it's a moment in UK MMA history. Do you remember that time when them 2 idiots put on that Master King of the Cage show and basically lost the house? So it's I guess at least I'm a footnote somewhere in a book. So.
One of the things I want to talk about, Ed, and if you're right to talk about this as well, is the news that we had a couple of weeks ago about someone that we know really well and have worked with, and we've known him for years, which was Mr. Neil Hall, God rest his soul, and him passing. I'm wanting to know, what your how your paths met up with Neil, and just your experience of Mr. Hall, and if you can just share that with us, that'd be great, brother. Yeah,
I don't mind. I mean, it was such a shock when I found out only last week. It really was, and genuinely upset me. And I'm a bit upset now just thinking about it. But I met Neil, I guess, pretty early at the start of my time in MMA. So, as I say, it was a lot smaller community then. Everybody knew everybody. You would turn up to MMA shows, it would be all the same people. Even if it was an MMA show down in Portsmouth, you'd walk in, it would be the same people. You'd know everybody. That's why you can never get away with saying, hey, I was around in the early days. Because you know what? You weren't. Because if you were, we'd know you. Yeah. And I'm sure, again, I've spoken to Tom Blackledge about this, because every so often you hear people go, oh yeah, I was around in the early days, and me and Tom go, I don't remember you. So, there was definitely like this very, very small community. So through that community, I knew Spenner, and from Spenner to Neil Hall. And I remember training at Neil Hall's Academy Fighting Chance really early 2000s. And when we formed the Northern Cartel, which was kind of like a connection of clubs that decided, hey, we should train together and share knowledge and skills. So it was Coliseum, it was Quantum, Spenner's Club, I think before it was called Full in Kazan, and then Fighting Chance. And we trained together. So, I knew Neil Hall from that. And then obviously, saw him at lots of events, cornering his guys. Then he moved into the reffing. So therefore, whilst I was emceeing, he was often the ref. So it was often, in between fights, it was me and him in the cage having a little chit chat in between fights and things like that. And he was a nice guy, and that's the thing that really kind of hits home. Is when I found the news, I kind of looked through some of the old pictures that I've got. Every picture I've seen is him with that smile on his face, and it's the first thing you remember when you think about Neil is that smile. He could literally light up a room. He was that much of a nice guy. And then when he went on to the UFC, and it was kind of like, wow, yeah, he's gone into reffing, he's excelled at it, he's really got to the game. So yeah, it was just to read the news last week, devastating, to be honest. Really is. And my heart goes out to Kath and Dan family. Must be really tough, especially at this time. All I can say to them is, hey, we're all thinking about you. And I know we're all thinking about you. Everybody in the MMA community knows Neil and feels the same. So, sad.
Yeah, for sure. And interesting you're saying about people thinking about Neil Hall. Yesterday they had Cage Warriors on, and on the big screens they had the screens dedicated to him, which kind of caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting that, and I don't think they'd advertised or said anything about it.
No,
really cool as well, and it just
really nice. I think that goes to show how respected he was, and also, again, such a nice guy. I don't know a single person who has ever had a bad word to say about Neil Hall. Not one person. And that for me is incredible because, hey, I'll tell you what, you'll find loads of people who've got bad words to say about me. So, the fact that he's there and nobody has ever had a bad word to say about him is just amazing. What a guy.
And like you said, the MMA community is a small community, brother. And if there was something bad about Neil, people would know about it, right?
Yeah, I mean, especially at the time, in the early 2000s, as I say, there wasn't that many clubs. There wasn't that many shows. It's not like now where there's hundreds of clubs and dozens of shows. There was 4 or 5 shows and 20 clubs across the country. So everybody knew everybody. You would walk into a show and you'd pretty much go, I know every single person in it. You knew all the fighters, you knew all the coaches, you knew half the fans, because at that time the fans were basically the fighters and the coaches. There wasn't a fan base in the early 2000s. The idea of people being fans of MMA, they simply didn't exist in the 2000s. It was, if you were at an MMA show, there was a good 80-90% chance that you trained in MMA and you knew somebody who was fighting. That's why you were there. So.
For sure, brother. And I remember going to Neil Hall's gym, that fighting chance in Batley, and it was it was like an old barn, and in the wall they had the bloody musket, is it those, they call musket, those guns? Yeah, those pellets in the wall, and I'm like, man, that's from back in the days. And the thing with Neil is, I use him. I used to use him for MMA officials because the thing about him was very professional, always on time, no drama. Even if things kind of went on a bit, he never caused me any issue, because that's one area that I could like you as an MC. You want the right people who can you don't have to think about them. They don't have to come for you for anything. You just give them what they need and they're at your whim. And even when Neil disagreed about something, he'd come and speak to me to one side. He'd never, grab hold of me in the arena and say, look, I'm not happy about that cage. Look at that fencing. He'd pull me over and he'd say, look, Safe, can you sort this out? Because we need to make sure that's right. There was one occasion where I had one fighter compete. He'd just fought. He'd come out. He'd done a boxing match. He'd come out. He was a journeyman, and then another guy, his lad, didn't turn up. So I said to this guy, "Oh, will you fight again?" And he was like, "Yeah, I'll fight again." And then Neil was saying, "Look, you've got to understand, what level I'm trying to do. I'm an official now with the UFC. I've got to make sure I do everything right. under these circumstances, I don't think it's right, this guy fighting again. However, if you want to do it, there's no problem there. We'll just sit to one side. You guys do what you got to do, and then we'll come back in. But he didn't make a big hoo-ha in front of everyone. He just pulled me to one side. So he was always very professional, no matter how small the show would be, like Combat Challenge, or how big UFC, all the way he acted right. And that's what I remember about that guy, man.
Oh, 100%. And I genuinely think the MMA world is a little darker without Neil Horwood.
Brother Aaron, we're similar age. You know, I'm 51. You might be a little bit older or a bit younger. I don't know, similar age. But have you had to adapt your training to kind of compensate for the age that you're at? And if you have, what have you done so that you can share that with us?
So I'm the same age, well, almost. I'm 51 in a month's time. So I'm coming up to 51. Do you know what? I don't know, because I still train as much as I can possibly train. So I'm still a no days off kind of guy. So, you know, I train 7 days a week. And that will be a combination of, you know, 4 or 5 days worth of martial arts, and then, you know, a couple of days of training weights or something like that. So I do that all the time. I virtually never take a day off. And, you know, many people will say, oh, you should rest day and do that, etc. But I kind of, this sounds a bit morbid, but I look at it as I've only got so many days left on the planet. I don't really want to waste those days sat not training. I just want to train. The biggest thing for me as I've grown older, and I guess it's only in the last few years, is that I've realized that the romanticism of building up all these skills that will enable me to compete with young guys is incorrect. It's a fallacy. You know, I've got 30 years worth of training. I've been grappling for plenty of times, and you know what? Here I am as a 50-year-old brown belt, and I get my ass whooped on a daily basis by people who have been training far less time than me. So, you know, white belts, blue belts, purple belts kick my ass. Yeah. And the biggest thing is suddenly realizing that, you know what, as you get older, you might get more knowledge, but you lose your ability to execute a lot of the things that you know. You get slower. You're less capable of reacting properly. And I just kind of have to accept as I've got older that I tap a lot more, and I get beaten up a lot more. And it sometimes it's pretty miserable. You know, I can, you know, because you think, well, here I am, I've been training all this time. Shouldn't I be better than this? So I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I am just really bad. So that's a possibility. So
no, I don't think that's the case, brother. I'll tell you why. Because this kind of resonates with me. So I started doing jiu-jitsu and doing some of that and working my way through it. And then it got to a stage where people were, you know, there were quite a significant amount of people getting the better of me, having to tap out. And I was thinking, man, first I used to say, well, if this was no-gi, I'd have you. But then reality slowly kicked in after a year or two and think, well, hold on a minute. It's not to do with the fact that it's no-gi. I've been doing it for a couple of years now. It's me age. However, then what I did, which helped me, Aaron, was I had different wins. So a win for me was, right, okay, I'm going to roll against Ben Burnett. And this round, he is not going to tap me out. That's my win. Or, you know, it's going to take him longer than what he did last time. And those are like little wins that I have, whereas it makes me feel good knowing that it took him a lot longer to tap me out than what he would do normally. And I think that's my way of kind of coping with getting old, you know.
And you're a smarter man than me, because I'm still stubborn. You know, in my head, I still think, well, I should be able to tap this guy out. And then when I get smashed, I just think to myself, well, I'm not good enough. So I don't like using age, weight, anything like that as an excuse. In my head, and it may be correct or incorrect, but again, it's the romanticism of martial arts, is your skills should be able to counter those physical advantages that somebody else has got. So if you're getting beaten by somebody, it's not because they're younger. It's not because you're older or they're bigger or whatever. It's because you haven't got the skills to close that gap. Now, I know it sounds silly. It sounds silly even whilst I'm saying it, but arguably that's what martial arts is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a set of skills that enable you to compete and beat people who have physical advantages over you. So I still go down that.
But brother, if that was the case, yeah, instead of Helio Gracie being put in the UFC, why didn't Helio Gracie step in?
True. But if you know the story, Helio Gracie wasn't the original choice. So I think originally they were looking at Half and Hickson and people like that, and they changed it to Hoist because Hoist was the smallest of the Gracies.
Really?
So So originally, the plan was to put in a different Gracie, but the other guys were bigger, stronger, and as that whole vehicle was essentially an exercise improving the effectiveness of jiu-jitsu, they decided to put Hoist in and say, well, if we put a 185-pound guy in and he beats these 270-pound monsters, nobody can say it was a physical advantage. It was a skill. It was the art. It was jiu-jitsu. So that's how Hoist ended up in there in the first place. So, but I tell you, one of the things that has changed as I've got older is when I was younger, I would just literally turn up, I'd train, do what I want, never thought about my health, never thought about anything. And then the last 3 or 4 years, I've really started, trying to think about, well, I need to know what's happening inside. So I started doing a lot of tracking. I wear a Whoop and I track all my stats. And in fact, 2019, I went through a process of tracking probably about 15 different stats in the morning. So resting heart rate, HRV, blood pressure, blood oxygen, blood sugar, grip strength. I did this on a daily basis to track all that.
I remember seeing you putting some of those statuses up, being all annoyed, like you didn't get enough sleep or you didn't do that. Is that what you're on about?
Yeah, absolutely. I still do that. So what this all boils down to is what you're saying, and the actual, the most important thing, and it's the thing that I ignored whilst I was younger, and most people still ignore now, is the importance of sleep. Sleep is the most critical part of your health and well-being. Yeah, if you don't get enough quality sleep, you don't recover. If you don't recover properly, you can't train hard enough, and you then get stuck in this cycle of getting worse and worse. So a lot of what I do is now focused on how do I maximize the sleep that I can get to recover better, so that I can train to the maximum of my capacity the following day. And also knowing that if I'm not recovered, I don't go out that day and push. I go out that day and go, right, okay, I shouldn't be expecting the same thing. So, I'm in bed by 9:30 every night. It's like I go to bed early now, just to try and make sure I get enough sleep. And then, as I say, part of that is that when I train, if you imagine you've got red, amber, green for how well recovered you are, I would never not train because of that. But I would change my expectations from my training session. So if I'm green, I'd go, this is a time for me to be pushing it. I should be able to push for the whole session. If I'm amber, I'd go, well, this is just a normal training session, so it should just go great. If it's a red session, I change my expectations. So I go, this is definitely not about winning rounds. This is about getting through the training session. So I do a lot of that kind of thing, a lot of monitoring, a lot of tracking, a lot of trying to improve my understanding of my health and well-being, just to hopefully to carry on training for a few more years yet. I quite fancy being able to, still compete in I guess, 10, 15 years. I still have an idea of competing at black belt and in Vegas at the World Masters and in my late 50s, early 60s. So that's the target now, to keep going.
Brother, I could be wrong here, but didn't one of the guys in the early UFCs, he was like 50 or 51, and he fought against Helio Gracie?
Was that not Roy Van Cleef?
Yeah, that's the guy. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's now a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he's still competing.
So he'll be in his 70s now.
Yeah, I think so. So you'll find him on Instagram, Roy Van Cleef, Black Dragon. He was an actor for a while, martial arts actor, and then lifelong martial artist, kickboxer, that kind of thing. And then he swapped to Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And as I say, he's a blue belt. He's competed at blue belt. So, that's one of the things with Brazilian jiu-jitsu is that at least you can potentially compete at a later age. So, there are age groups in the competition. So you're not going to suddenly be facing a 20-year-old, so it's relatively safe. You're not going to get your face elbowed through with canvas or anything. It's just grappling. So you can arguably carry on competing for quite some time.
The other thing you mentioned, the importance of sleep. When I did a podcast with Ian Butlin, he says that every day he has an hour's sleep, like late afternoon, and that's part of his routine because he knows that that's what his body wants. And I thought that was a bit strange, thinking, well, why is he sleeping during the day? How can you fall asleep and then get up and feel okay? But
I do.
I guess
I'm quite jealous though. I'm quite jealous that he has a lifestyle that allows him to go to bed in the afternoon.
Brother, he's got that lifestyle, right? He's always had that lifestyle. If you don't believe me, you can ask Danny Dyer. He'll tell you about that lifestyle.
I'm quite jealous of anybody who gets to have naps. I haven't had naps since I've been about 7. So, I speak to Ian obviously quite a lot, and he joined Whoop, and I kind of gave him some ideas and guidance and some of the things that I've learned in Whoop. And as I say, I think he's got to the point now where he's really improved his sleep patterns. But sleep is the most critical thing. If you're going to bed and you're getting 6-7 hours sleep, you are not recovered. You absolutely are not recovered. And you don't realize, but you're far from working at your full capability. So you should be getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep, good amount of REM sleep for mental recovery, good amount of deep sleep for physical recovery. And if you're not doing that, it is impacting the rest of your life.
Brother Aaron, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your martial arts journey with us, man. It's been so cool because I love having people like you, Ian Butlin, Pete Irvin, Les Allen, those people who've been around for decades. And it's just bits of it kind of resonates with you. And like you said, we all have a similar story, and I love it, man. Thank you so much, my brother.
It's all right. It's been good to chat to you, actually. It's been a long time, Carney.